Hello. Okay, so when you think about watercolor, what is the first subject that you think of? I think for a lot of people, it's flowers. I think flowers and watercolor just sort of go hand in hand, and you might think about the really sort of flowy watercolor flowers that look effortless. And if you've ever tried to paint those flowers, it's not effortless, it's effortful. It is full of effort. It's really hard to do. In fact, when I started watercolor, I got very discouraged because I was trying to do flowers in that style and I couldn't figure it out. All of that said, I think there is a way to paint flowers that's very accessible for people who might not be super experienced with watercolor, and that is to use pen on top. So that's what we're gonna do today. I thought we'd do a really pretty floral bouquet in a simple style of watercolor and ink. This is gonna go perfectly with our cohesive color palettes that we've been talking about, where we start with sort of a base color and then we add different colors into that base in order to get a palette that feels like the colors all just naturally go together. That is going to work great for this project. I am gonna use a size 8 round brush. I'm also gonna use my 24 color essential palette. If you don't have these exact things, it's gonna be fine. I'm also gonna paint in my practice book. I'm gonna do this in the practice book just because I want like a nice big sheet of paper to work on. I think it'll work better to show you sort of what I'm doing with the ink. If you have a sketchbook that's smaller than this, you could definitely do it in a sketchbook. You could also just do it on a sheet of paper. That is always acceptable. This would be a really pretty card too. I will say, I think this type of painting is a little bit easier if you work a little bit bigger when you're first started. I tend to like to paint big. Lots of you know Lacey, my friend Lacey. Lacey likes to work in a smaller sketchbook. She has a tendency to work smaller. These are the things that you just learn about yourself the more that you paint. So for me, working big is comfortable for me. I like to just be able to move around the page and not get too fiddly with it. That might not be your jam. So listen to your little artistic brain and think about what makes you happy when you paint and do that. Pick that thing, always. That was a bit of a tangent. Okay, we're gonna start by mixing our color palette. For this painting, I'm gonna start with a base of orange. So whatever orange you have, just make a little puddle of it in your mixing wells. So I have 4 mixing wells. I think is 4 gonna be enough? I don't know. We'll see. Stay tuned on that. I think in one of them, I'm gonna mix in some reddish brown. So this is gonna be my first one. I'm also gonna add a little bit of water here, just so that it's not quite that dark. And then in this one, I think I wanna do yellow ochre. So we're gonna add some yellow ochre into this. Maybe a little bit more. The orange is really powerful, so it's a tendency to sort of overwhelm the color that you're mixing with. That does happen. And then I definitely want to do, let's do a pink. How about, let's see what fuchsia looks like. If we mix some fuchsia in here. That's pretty. I'm gonna water this down a little bit more too. We're also gonna need some green, and I think I'm gonna go with tree green for this. Let's see how this, we'll see how this mixes up. So you can see the orange does make that a lot earthier. Let's just add some water in there. And then, okay, I'm gonna do another color because I want some filler flowers. So we'll go back to our orange. I'm not gonna do a whole lot of orange in this one because I'm gonna mix it with blue. So let's do ultramarine blue. So this is gone very gray, so I'm gonna put some more blue in here. And now we've got this sort of blue-gray color. Like I said, I'm doing this in my practice book, so I'm gonna swatch these colors out on my page opposite where I'm gonna paint. I just wanna make sure that these are gonna look good together. So I'm just gonna do some little blobs here, and then we'll let it dry and just make sure that these look like what we want. Okay, I let these dry. They're mostly dry. I think I went a little bit heavy on the pink, so I'm just gonna add a little bit more orange in here to my pink. It also may just need to be diluted a little bit. Let's just add a little bit more water here. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's better. That's better. That goes with these two, because these are going to be our flower colors, and then this is going to be the stems and the filler flowers and the vase. We're going to put them in a vase. I think this works better with those. So this is why we swatch. Now we've got our color palette set. So I want to start this by saying we're just doing like blobs. I know I say this all the time, and sometimes people get annoyed with me on social media, and they're like, you always say that. But it's true. We're just gonna do blobs. So I'm gonna do like a blobby shape with an irregular outline. So like not a perfect flower shape, not a perfect circle, just like total random blobbiness. That's that one. That's it. That's all we're doing. If you feel like it is not saturated enough for you, you can always go back and add a little bit more pigment in here if you want to. It is artist choice, always. Now I'm gonna put another flower next to this one, and if I touch this new flower next to this flower, they are gonna kind of bleed together, most likely. So you decide if you're okay with that or if you're not okay with that. That is up to you. So same thing, we've done just a random blobby shape here. Make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so now we have our two blobs, and I'm gonna do one more here, and this one I'm gonna make like kind of a more of like a jagged blob. So we're gonna just give this guy a slightly different texture than the other ones. And again, this is gonna kind of probably run into the other ones a little bit. It might. And if it does, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with these guys kind of running together. But if you're not, then you'll wanna keep them totally separate. So there's our little trio of flowers. And I want to do some filler flowers, so that's why we mixed up the blue. So I'm going to go over here to my blue, and I want to put a filler flower in here, and I'm going to just make it like little spikes, a little spiky flower. Like think about blue aster. Do you know blue aster? Actually, I think I'm gonna have to add a little bit more paint here because I don't think I have quite enough. So too much orange. Too much orange. I'm gonna go back to the blue. Blue aster has this sort of like a daisy, but it's like little teeny tiny petals. That's what I'm going for here, is that sort of look. This is very gray. I have lost my blue. I just added a little bit more blue in there. Okay. It's very, very gray and not as blue as I want it. So I'm just soaking up a little bit of it with my brush drying the brush off. Adding a little bit more blue in there. See, I didn't mix up enough when we tested it. And that is why this has happened, but it's okay, we can fix it. I just went back and added a little bit more paint in there. Let's do one that's kind of like up here. It's gonna be kind of like side view flower. Maybe one, well, is that enough? Do we have enough? Maybe one right here on this side of this flower. Right there. What do we think? Does that look good to us? This is what I ask myself when I'm painting. Does that look good? I think it's gonna be good. I think it's gonna be good. Now I'm gonna put in my leaves and my stems. So I'm going to the green and using the tip of my brush, I'm gonna put the tip of the brush down and then I'm just gonna pull and lift. And that's gonna give me that nice leaf shape. And if you wanna do a fatter leaf, just do it more than once. That same movement. There's one right there. Over here, let's do a little stem, okay? And then we'll do some leaves coming off of this little stem, like that. There we go. We are gonna put in a little vase, but I think I want some leaves down here. So this is like two of those leaves put together, right? One on each side. And then we can put in a little stem using just the tip of the brush. There's probably green in here, right? From this flower. So maybe this stem comes down like this. This is gonna come down into our vase. And this guy's stem, maybe it's on an angle. And then there would be a stem from this one too that would come down, just putting it like behind the leaves. And it would come down like that. Okay. So at this point, if you wanted to, you could just leave it as a little bouquet. You wouldn't even have to make a vase for it if you didn't want to. But I want to show you how to make a vase for your flowers. Let's just give these guys some stems too. Okay, so to do a vase, we're gonna keep it super, super simple. We're gonna go back to our blue gray, and we're just gonna decide, let's see, how do we want it to be a round vase or a square vase? Because the bottom of the vase is gonna be here, right? That's the bottom of the vase. And I'm thinking round. I just like a round vase. It's funny because I have a lot of round vases in the house, I have noticed. So I guess that's what I like. Okay, that's it. That's the vase that we've made. If you want, you can make it come up a little bit further. I don't know. You could even paint in some water in there if you wanted to, but I kind of like my little wonky vase just as it is. This is not intended to be like a perfect looking sphere or anything like that. It's good just the way it is. Okay, so The other thing that I want to do with the paint is I want to give my flowers centers. Like I want to darken up the centers of each flower, but they are still a little bit wet. I can see that it's wet right here. This one is mostly dry, but I do want these to be totally dry before I put the centers in because I want to keep the centers somewhat distinct so that it doesn't just run into the flower. So we're gonna let this dry and then we'll come back and do the centers. All right, this is totally dry. And for the centers, I'm really just gonna do circles. That's it. I'm just doing circles. So what color do we wanna do for the centers of our flowers? I'm thinking I'm gonna do this pink color in the center of this one. And in the center of this one, I think I'm gonna do the yellow color. And then for this one, I think I'm gonna do the blue. Let's just do the blue in this one. So it's gonna go even maybe a little bit purple. I just wanna darken this up just a little bit. Now, we do have to let this dry again before we can do the pen details on top of the flowers. So at this point, it would really depend on whether or not you think you could start doing pen details on this part without running your hand through the wet part and dragging it all over everything. I definitely don't trust myself enough to be able to do that. So I'm gonna get out my little heat gun and I'm gonna dry the centers so that everything is dry, and then I'll do the pen details. This is totally dry, and now all we have to do is add our pen details. So this is a size 0.4 liner pen. It's a fairly small nib, and that's what you want. You want a fairly small nib, but really there's not like a huge difference. Here's a 0.5. It's not a huge difference. So you could use a 3, a 4, a 5. You could probably even use a 2, whatever size you want. You could even use a Sharpie, and that would work too. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to show you how to do the centers of all of these flowers. And then I'll kind of speed it up because doing pen details does take some time. But once you know how to do one, you'll know how to do all 3. It's very easy. Starting in the center of the flower, and I'm gonna try to do this so that I am not putting my hand in front of it. I will do my best, but I just make like a little dot in the center of the flower. And then I'm just gonna come out from that dot and I'm gonna make little petally shapes, just like you're drawing like a preschool flower off of the center of that flower. And I'm gonna keep going around and around and around, making those little, they're like ends. They look kind of like ends. N for nice. Nice job on that flower. So we're just going around and around, making ends. I guess they turn into U's when you get down to the bottom. And these do not have to be uniform. In fact, I think they're better if they're not, because if you look at a flower, every little thing is slightly different. There's a lot of symmetry in nature, but also a lot of irregularity. So that is something to keep in mind as you're painting. Okay, so you can see that my center, I'm kind of following where the center of that paint was, where the painted center was, in order to know like how far out to come. But you can see like on this side, it's out a little bit farther. I'm just gonna come over here and I'm just gonna add some more pen details. There we go. That's it. Now, another thing that I like to do to the centers is I like to come around the edge and just sort of darken up that edge and make sure that the edge is not a perfect circle. I do not want a perfect circle in the middle of my flower. I want it to look a little uneven and a little bit jagged almost. Okay, there's the center of that one. Now we're gonna do the exact same thing, starting in the middle and then making those little petally shapes on all 3 of these main flowers. So I'm gonna speed it up, and you can take as much time as you need with this. You can pause it and then come back. But this is what I'm gonna do to all of the flowers. Now we're ready to do the petal shapes. And for this flower, I'm gonna imagine that there are like 2 different layers of petals, right? So there's gonna be a sort of interior layer of petals here, and then there's gonna be this exterior layer of petals in the back. So this is gonna be my first layer. And I'm just kind of making them very uneven. And then on the outside, I kind of follow along the lines of the paint, like wherever is a natural place for a petal to be. So you see how it's got that like double layered look, almost like I guess like a rose maybe would have that. The center of a rose doesn't look like that. These are made of flowers, guys. These are not real. So, and then I just kind of go in and do some little tiny lines coming out from the center of the flower on each petal. And again, this is a thing that is very easy to do, but it does take a little bit of time. So I'm just doing little hash marks. You could even switch to a smaller pen if you want to keep your lines super tiny. You could switch to a really small pen, and that would be totally fine. If you want to turn your paper or your book, because pulling lines towards yourself is easier than pushing lines away from yourself, you could do that too. Again, that's part of understanding like what's comfortable for you as an artist. And you learn those things by painting and by drawing and doing all the stuff that we do. So I go around the whole flower, all of the petals, doing this. And once I've filled it all the way in, I kind of go back and I add a few more lines in here close to the center. This is just going to give it a little bit more depth in here, right in the middle. And in these the little folds between the petals, I might darken those up too. We're gonna do basically the same thing to the other two, but I'm gonna sort of change up the petal shape. So where this one had the 2 layers of petals, let's do this one with just 1 layer of petals. Or maybe there's some of them are like hidden behind the other ones a little bit, like those guys. Okay, So that one was very easy. And now we just do the same thing. We just do all these little lines coming off of the center. And then darkening up the area around that center part to just give it a little bit more dimension. And maybe we'll darken up some of these spaces between the petals too, just to accentuate it. So now for this one, I'm gonna make this one more like a skinny petal. And maybe you come outside of the line a little bit. That's allowed. You can do whatever you want on this guy. I'm gonna skip back over to this side. Maybe that guy's a bigger one and this one is a smaller one. When you get up close here, it's just gonna be lines, right? Indicating that there are petals back there because we can't see those guys. Okay, so there's our daisy guy, and then he gets, or she gets lines too. So our main flowers are done, and for these little side flowers, I want to just kind of make them like long spiky parts. So think about the side view of a flower. That's kind of what I'm going for. And I am outlining the stems as well. So we're just, you can kind of follow the paint, but you don't have to. When you're putting lines in, your lines can be off the paint, and that can actually make it look better. In my opinion. All right, and then one more guy right here. And his stem. And we can come down here and we can outline the stems of the flowers too. Just kind of keep in mind that some of these are behind, like this one is sort of behind the others. I got really off with my line right there. That's okay. It's not gonna matter because we are gonna put in some like little dash marks just like we did on the petals. And you're not even gonna notice. So we'll just put some little line details in there. And that mistake line, we'll just blend right in. And the leaves. So same thing. I'm just gonna outline the leaves.
this leaf too. I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna outline all of them, I think. Whoop. I lost control a little bit on that one. And these guys. I had to make that one up. I don't know what's going on in that one. And then I'm gonna put some little lines in these too. Some extra little lines. Do I want to do, I think on this one, I'm gonna do lines this way too. And on that one too. And on this one. I guess all the bigger leaves, I'm doing some of those little sideways diagonal lines. Well, I could not think of what a sideways line was. That is unfortunate. Okay, and let's just outline our vase too. Do we want to put a shadow in down here? This is my blue color. I'm just gonna add a little bit of Payne's gray in here. And I'm just gonna, I feel like it's gotta have a place to sit. It's gotta have a place to sit. There we go. All right, that's it. Our flowers are finished.
I feel like this is so cute. And it came together pretty quick. I think this one is really, really doable. And I also think it's a really good example of using the cohesive color palette to your advantage, because sometimes florals, when I do them any other kind of way, they just feel a little disconnected. This really helps them feel cohesive. So I hope you'll try this. I do think this would make a super cute fall card. Anyway, I hope you'll try it.